would you describe the general state of perception, man's perception, in regards to the environment, to spiritual, religious matters, men towards fellow men and women? Do you have an opinion, a perspective of where things are right now?
As a spiritual teacher, we'd hope that mankind would be moving towards their spiritual identity and their reality. We see a sense of great struggle and turmoil. We see it in the earth and within ourselves. There's just a great amount of confusion and struggle. And we believe in spiritual teachings, from the teachings of our beloved masters, that it's a time for spiritual rebirth, to find our reality, our origin, and to move back towards that reality.
What would be the term that you would use to represent the force that is God, or that being?
We use Allah, and we find any term to be acceptable. A lot of spiritualists are trying to break down barriers of I believe, nouns, and move more towards the action. Call Allah, Elohim, God, the higher power, the Almighty. There's a force greater than myself working.
And how would you describe that force? I know it's a broad question, but how would I know it's beyond description, but if you could encapsulate it, how would you encapsulate that force? How would you describe it?
A higher consciousness, a force of energy that is governing my soul, and we have the world of form that governs my desires, and then I find the yin and yang and the clash between what my soul needs for its eternal journey and what the physicality is entertaining itself with. I think now more than any time in history, that these are realities that many spiritual masters were persecuted for. But now, because of our advancements in science and understanding, we're beginning to understand there's a quantum reality, that your form, your molecules, your atoms, subatomic reality, and now they say everything is light. So that means that my light reality has its desires, and my physicality has its desires. Now they're clashing, because my physicality just wants to entertain itself and just take care of its physicality, but my light reality has its own requirements. So finding that balance, what we have as in the Orientalists are the yin and yang, that the energy that comes on to the soul, trying to enlighten my light being and my energy on what it needs and what its purpose is, and then my entertainments and desires that come to my physicality. So finding that balance and dealing with that clash, because the earthly desire is moving up my legs, up to the belly, which is like the equator of our being, and then the heavenly realities that are dressing my heart and the upper latayas or chakras is dressing my soul and my light being. Now how to find that balance and how to find that control. And that's why we believe it's a strong time for a spiritual rebirth, because there's so much earthly desires and they're all around us, like children in candy stores. We just don't know when to stop, and then how to discipline ourselves to do spiritual practices, meditation, chanting, contemplation, food for the soul. Food for the body is going to be completely different than food for the soul. If we think about our quantum reality, then food for the soul would have to be in the breathing and in the conscious. It's food for energy and for light. So we're moving closer towards that reality, and a lot of people are feeling that.
So almost what you're saying is that the clash between these two forces is almost, it's presenting an opportunity.
Yeah, because if it was subtle, we wouldn't sort of understand it. We sort of lend ourselves in different ways, but we're feeling, all of us, from spiritual teachers to people in everyday life, we feel the clash of our desires. We're just bombarded by commercialism and materialism, and we don't know when to stop buying out of the excitement of all these wonderful things that are presented to us and to consume. But there's also a desire for the soul, and my soul has an eternal journey. That once this mass, I think that's what Einstein was trying to prove, the energy equals your mass times your light squared. And once this mass goes to the ground, we all say that it goes back into the dirt and it's buried. What happened to the energy? It has a journey. It's free from this mass now. So it's free from its gravity and moves towards its energy fields. But it requires something from us. It needs to be energized. It needs to be nourished. And that's what we're finding is the struggle, is how do I sort of abstain? How do I find a happiness in what I have? And I don't really need everything, and how to teach our families and our lives and ourselves. We don't need everything, but to be happy with what we have and to spend some time on the soul and break away from our busy schedules to find time to meditate, to contemplate, and to do something for my soul, not just for my body.
So how do you account for the fact that humans have gotten so far away that they are actually at odds with themselves, that the journey of the soul is so separated from their daily purpose?
Well, that's the proof that material desires, unchecked, can become very dangerous. They make us to be heated and very ignorant beings. And the belief is that if you apply a discipline, some people call religion, it's going to build a faith. Because you put a discipline upon the body, it starts to build a faith that I'm a light being. I'm actually a spiritual being sent for a bodily test, a test in this form. I'm not an earthly creation sort of desiring a spiritual reality. I'm a spiritual being sent onto this earth to experience this earth. Once I put a discipline upon the self and I start to build the light of faith, it starts to build the perfection within me. And that's what's necessary in our spiritual pursuit.
So what is the source of those physical desires? Because God is everything, and yet there's a force that's almost opposing that. What is the source? Do you have an idea of what the source of that is? Of the earthly desires, the desires that we are tempted by?
Yeah, we give the example of the body and the soul. And the body is teamed with the ego. So my egoism and its desires is like a horse. And this horse that we're given, because the soul is the rider. So imagine like on a field, we're presented a horse and say, okay, now you can go take that horse, tame the horse, and ride the horse. So we're all sent to this earth with that same project. So our soul ascends or descends into the body at a certain point in our sort of mother's womb, 120 days, the heart beats, the soul is there. Now you're born. What are you going to do with that horse? Spiritualists come and teach us, okay, that horse is going to be a 600-pound beast. Either you learn to train it and ride it, and then it serves you in your purpose and understanding for this earth. You go through your experiences, your life events, and make you to be a better person, and in the end you leave and depart with the wisdom and the understandings and the testings that the Divine had intended for us. If you don't tame that horse, then it's like you carrying the horse instead of riding it. And most people carry their ego like a 600-pound horse on their head. They haven't tamed it, it's sort of run unchecked, and now it's governing them. And if you imagine carrying a horse, the burden, what we feel now is the burden of mankind is the weight of the material world. And it's verified through television. You see commercials of just depression and anti-anxiety medicine. It means everybody's suffering from the same. They don't know how to get this horse off their back. And anybody who's worked with horses knows that you have to train it, you have to break it in, you have to put certain weights on the horse so that it's used to being ridden. If a horse is wild, it's not going to allow a rider on it. So our whole life is about disciplining the horse and trying to tell myself I don't need to eat that right now. I don't need to do that right now. I don't need to entertain myself. For people who want to meditate, it's very difficult to set aside a time to meditate. So I got to get my emails, I got to make a sandwich. All these desires come up, and they're real desires because you hear the whispering. As soon as you sit to do something good, oh, you don't have to do that. Let's have a movie and some popcorn. So constantly battling these desires within us, which is the egoism, and how to bring that down, subdue it, make it to be calm, and then move towards the reality of the soul and find a balance in life.
So you mentioned you and I, and how do you find the real you and the real I in that quagmire? Because I would imagine that it seems to me that the you and I that most people, that people are ruling their lives is not the one that should be making the decisions. necessarily.
Yeah, it's in spiritual teaching. As a matter of fact, they teach you to not use the I. That the I, it opens up my I-ness, which I want, I need, I. Then it becomes a society filled with people who are just interested in themselves. So we use the word of we, they, and move away from I-ness and selfishness to selfless. And the whole purpose of our life was to worship the divine. So when they come and ask people that, what's your purpose of life? Why were you created? Sufis believe we're created to worship the divine. And move towards our purpose in life would then be the example of the prophets. So the prophets were like the symbols or the heroes of the divine presence. That look to them as an example of what you should be doing. So then when we look to the example of the prophets, they were of service. They didn't come to be kings and to be worshipped. They came to be of service. So they're trying to show us that the highest form of worship, once you discipline yourself and abstain from taking and desiring and moving towards selflessness, then they were the example of being selfless. That they took from the divine presence, they took great abuse from their own people, and then they served them, they prayed for them, they tried to be tolerant over them and give to them, and divine was teaching that that's your nature. Because look at nature around us, and these are always Sufi examples. Like the Shaykh would say, go look at the tree, hit the tree. As soon as you hit the tree, it gives you fruit. Divine is saying, look, you hit the tree, it gave you fruit. It didn't hit you back with a branch and beat you up. So then nature is showing to us, be of service. When the wood is chopped and cut, it gives you warmth, it gives you fragrance, gives you a sense of light. So everything around us is showing us how to be of service. But we lost that. We became a selfish being, where it's about I and how much I can have and how much I want and how much I need. And spiritual rebirth is to move towards, it's not about your I actually has to be brought down. And it's about being of service. But you can't give what you don't have. So a lot of people like to be of service, but with bad character. So then they go out and they spread abuse, they touch people, they do things that they're not supposed to, they abuse the power that begins to open to them. So then again the prophets are teaching, is you have to purify yourself first, perfect yourself first, then you have something to give. Otherwise you just put upon yourself a certain spiritual dress and you give it a bad name. Because many people say, okay, well, why was this Christian like this, Jewish person like this, Muslim person like this? Is the divine is perfect. It's the creation that has problems. No matter with what color you paint it with, if a person is a crook, whatever religion you paint them with, he's going to be crooked in that religion because he didn't perfect or build himself. So then the Prophet's example is first fix yourself. Fix all your desires, your bad wants, your prone towards evilness. Once you perfected yourself, now you can be a vehicle or a vessel for divine grace.
And that's the paradox, isn't it? Because you have to give up the self, and yet you have to focus on your own being in order to release that.
Yeah, which is then you find the reality within you, is that you thought this imitated body was the self. So then internal reflection is who knows himself will know his Lord. As soon as you start to reflect, you say, oh, this is not my real being. This is first the imitated like imposter who has all these hidden desires, and I'm actually having to move inside. So many times in the spiritual communities, they would have a bird cage with a beautiful little bird, and the Shaykh would keep it there, and it would be a symbol that your body is the prison. It's holding the reality of that bird captive. And if you abstain and discipline your body, these bars will become smaller and smaller. If that bird can fly, it knows how to go towards its source. It will get its nourishment, its power, and then come back and energize the body. It means the more power we give to the soul, the more energy and discipline it puts onto the body. It means then perfected beings, they become of service, they become light beings.
Can you describe the actual experience, what your personal experience is of worshiping the divine?
Yeah, we're trained not to speak in the I and to talk about our accomplishments, but what we said before in the training is that you can't give what you don't have. So you have to be through a process of rigorous trainings, disciplines, all sorts of abstinence with the Shaykh and the Master. The first concept is that you have to have a mentor, someone more spiritually powerful than myself, someone who has walked that program, existed in that reality, came back to teach me and mentor me on that process. Without that, I'm making it up as I go, which can be very dangerous on spiritual realities, because if I'm leaning and lending myself to my faults, at any time I fall sort of victim to my own desires. The mentor, more spiritual than myself, begins to discipline me, that no, it's time for you now to start fasting. You start to fast with your eyes, you fast with your ears. The concept of fasting is not just with the mouth, but fast with your ears. Don't listen to bad, don't listen to backbiting. Don't lend yourself to hearing about bad things, because immediately you speak about them. Try to abstain with your eyes and fast. So we practice in our fasting with our ears, with our eyes. Then you fast in your breath and try to keep the consciousness of the breath. Then fast in your tongue. Abstain from eating. And fasting from the mouth, from food and drink, is not only to give you hunger, but to be conscious about people around you. There are people here that don't eat and drink regularly. And there are people who are not having a complete meal. And there are people who don't appreciate all of our bounty. And there's places all over the world that you see horrible children, pictures of children that are dying and birds trying to eat them. They can't get access to food. Well, you won't be conscious of that because of the land of bounty, unless we abstain. So we had to go through these disciplines and then sit for hours in meditative practices and prayer practices and constantly disciplining. The constant of praying so many times a day throughout the day is to tame the horse. Is not at first such an exciting process that people think, oh, they're enjoying doing it. No, but it's a strenuous sort of discipline upon the self. There are many things you would like to do. At that time the Master's teaching, you break from what you're doing, however pleasurable it is, and not to discipline yourself. And then accompanying that Master to see how they react in conditions. How do they talk? How do they sort of talk the talk and walk the walk? That when attacked, how do they react? They give back love. Many times we claim to be sweet, and the Master teaches you will be tested, because the divine is real. So if you're claiming to be a teacher or a master and claiming to be sweet, how come when you get squeezed, you're very sour, very harsh? You have to be like nature, be squeezed and still give out fruit. People who don't like you, pray for them more. It's easy to love people who love you, but more rewarding to love those who are not appreciating or loving you. So then you have to walk the walk, and you have to accompany these masters. You have to accompany a teacher and go through that whole process.
That was going to be my next question, is what would be the steps that you would prescribe to getting closer to that part of ourselves that is able to worship the divine? And would you say that you've just that pretty much covered it, everything you've said? The steps that
yeah, you take a step now, whatever program people find themselves inclined to. That's why you can't say, and we don't say there's only one way for everyone, neither my way or the highway. That has to be from the ego. That our spiritual life is like Baskin Robbins. There's got to be 31 flavors, because everybody has their own flavor, their culture, their background, their understandings, the different disciplines that they want to put, and what comes natural to them. Choose a path. And in that path, look to, it's like choosing a college. Why do you choose a college? You say, look at the college, look at the history of the college. How many years have they been around? Who's the dean of that college? Who are the professors of the college? What have they sort of accomplished? Same in a spiritual school, that the professors are these big sort of mentors. How many spiritual realities are they able to bring out for their students? What have they accomplished? What are the quality of the students and the lineage of those students that they put out? Then that's the sort of spiritual path that we'd be interested in. and that they have living professors, living teachers, mentors that can take us towards that reality.
Well, there seems to be one consistency among all religions and spiritual exercises is basically shutting off the internal dialogue. That seems to be a consistency, whether it's through prayer, meditation. Would you agree with that? That is essential to opening up that part of us that's more able to...
Yes, through the meditation is to discipline the voice, the active mind, and moving towards the reality of the heart. So then everything, the Divine says, I'll show you within you and outside of you this reality. So we invented the computer as an understanding of ourselves. So most of our computing is done through the CPU, which is the heart. So then why are we trying to compute through the screen? Why are we putting all the thought process on the head? It doesn't have the capacity, it gives you the migraines and the headaches. The infinite capacity is the heart. So then you shut off the mind, it's not going to understand that reality. It only goes on what it hears and sees, and all of that is an illusion, because this brain is in a box that has never seen light. So how is it able to describe anything? It doesn't. It takes senses based on conditioning and tells you what it wants. So we know it's an illusion. So they were telling us thousands of years ago that this world is but an illusion. Now scientists say, yeah, it is. As a matter of fact, all these atoms are moving at such a high rate of speed, it gives the illusion of something solid when it's not. So then you start to make your chanting that the brain doesn't understand this reality. So you start to meditate and contemplate and move towards the reality of the heart. And then they have all of their spiritual disciplines on how to do that and how to shut the brain off and meditate towards the heart.
I know you mentioned that you don't like to speak about personal accomplishments, but if it's not too personal, and of course if you don't want to,
Sure.
obviously not, but can you describe maybe your maybe the first moment or your most powerful moment when you've experienced that connection? I know it's it's difficult for one thing to describe probably, and difficult maybe because in some practices it's just not something you do. So if it's not comfortable with that, that's okay.
Yeah, no, why we're trained to steer away from that is that, yeah, you have to accompany the teacher to actually see what they talk and their walk is matching. Because everybody may have all of this stuff memorized and they put it out there. Then you have to accompany them to see what their practices are. But we generally steer away from the person who praises themselves. Because these realities, when they open, it's a hidden love affair with Divine. Divine begins to teach you that I love you. But a condition of this love is don't ever speak about it. Don't talk about your closeness with me for the purpose of attaining something. It's like being married to a very wealthy person. You want to just keep calling the Entertainment Tonight and get a check from people. I know this guy. I know what I think this lady did. I can set you up with a meeting with him. Divine is saying that you're selling me. You're trying to capitalize on that relationship. So all of our training is behind this consciousness of the Divine is don't talk about it. So then there has to be something there that we're tasting and energizing from ourselves. And most of the students on a spiritual path have had a very profound experience. That in our own lives went through very sort of materialistic life, raised in California and Beverly Hills, and done that, seen that. And to the extent of that materialism, which never ended its satisfaction, there was never an apex where I felt happy. And as much as I bought, and as much as I spent, and as much as I did, there was always something and someone doing more, and whatever I was succeeding in wasn't anything. So it left a tremendous void, like a bankrupt feeling. No matter how much I'm pursuing, it's never enough. And then a tremendous spiritual experience, an awakening, where something happens and you see energies and beings around you that you know to be true, and that there's a much greater reality. And then that voice begins to speak to you, that are you going to die towards that ignorance and just chasing that? Or would you like a taste of this? So many people have had a very profound spiritual experience life-altering experience, near-death experience, where they experience the lights, they experience these energies, and that's it for them. That was enough, thank you very much, I got the signal. There's something much greater than myself out there. And then we go and in pursuit of it, and our personal pursuit was then go back to our religious background. And in pursuing that religious background, I didn't find it there. I found them to be extreme, I found them to be very tough, to go and pray on a certain day with everybody, and then they were mean to begging people on the steps. So then I knew that they didn't have the key. Although they professed to have that understanding, the soul was then saying, no, you have to seek out the spiritual people who walk the walk, talk the talk, and they're hidden. It means that they don't have the big structures. A lot of times they come to us and say, well, why don't you join us and we go out and make a huge structure and get people to come. And in itself it becomes an idol. That 50 people worshipping and not having to pay the bill of the worshipping lend themselves towards a spiritual path. 500 people trying to pay a $15 million loan, then everything is based on paying that, and everything based on making that money for that, and they never bring spiritual speakers to come and speak about it. Because, oh, don't take our flock away, we got to pay our bills. So then the pursuit was towards the spiritualists, that they operate on old school, like a caravan. They just keep moving. Who comes, comes. Who leaves, leaves. Who stays, stays.
Okay, we'll go to love. How would you describe the force of love? What is that? What is that force?
Faith. That in the training and in the discipline, the first discipline is to take away anger. And that anger is the opposite of faith. So as much as you have anger, it takes away from the ocean of faith. Because in that moment of anger, many things can happen that people regret. How did that happen? I got angry. So the spiritual teachings that anger takes you out of that ocean of faith. So move towards subduing the anger and not being a volcano that explodes on people. So the sacred heart, which is in the prophetic reality. Why did Moses see a burning bush as God? God is not a burning bush. But he sees God in the condition of his state. So it means he's teaching us that you have to have that yearning and that burning within your heart to be in divine presence. Only at that time you'll see God as you want. So violent people see God as violent. Hateful people see God as hateful. Jealous people see God as jealous, and all of these characteristics. So then they came to teach us, if you don't fix yourself, you're going to see God in the image you want him to be. So then all of the disciplines would take away these bad characteristics, take away anger, walk a path of humility. So they begin to teach you, if you're going to walk a path of humility, people come, say things to you, look in a way that's not popular, dress in a way that's not popular, and be humble, be humble, be humble. As difficulties come to your body, move towards your heart, then instead of exploding, that fire becomes like a passion within the heart. That you can only talk to God at night. You can only cry to divine presence at night. You can only pray for forgiveness to the divine at night. Then your condition of your heart becomes love. When that love and that fire is burning in the heart and not burning on people, that becomes the essence of faith, that your faith becomes stronger, and you see that all this creation is created out of that love. And that's what we said at the beginning, the divine begins to teach us, be like nature. I've created all of this creation with love, you be of service. Don't judge. So then the biggest sickness we have now is the sickness of love and judgment. So as soon as you begin to think you love and move towards the divine love, divine is teaching you, leave judgment. Judgment is my chair. Let me judge my creation. When they take their last breath, I'll judge them. At least I judge them with all the facts. You judge as humans with a tainted vision. You like something, you judge it a certain way. You don't like it, you judge it another way. So the biggest difficulty in love now, and to teach people love, is to leave judgment. To love something and don't judge it. It's very easy, my children can find fault in everything. It's more spiritually advanced to walk into a room filled with cracks, but find something good and find a perfection in it. So overlook people's faults, overlook what they're doing wrong, and try to find something good in that, and to magnify that good and move towards these oceans of love, and to know that everything around us, we're being tested by the Divine Presence.
So what is the ultimate accomplishment a human can aspire to? What is our spiritual evolutionary peak, would you say?
The perfection of the self. That if we can move towards the perfection of the self, discipline ourselves from these bad desires and bring out the reality of light, then the Divine begins to teach us, you can be a star on this planet, because a star is a source of light. You don't have to just be a form and just consuming. Discipline your desires. When my love begins to open in your heart, you become like a source of light, and you're of service, and you've reached enlightenment and all sorts of angelic realities. And the teaching is that as much of this angelic power begins to dress you, this divine grace begins to emanate through the being. So the station of enlightenment is the highest gift from Divine Presence, and an eternal gift, because that light is eternal. What we achieve with the body of money, fame and titles, nobody's ever taken it with them. And that's why they open up the pharaoh's graves and everybody goes to a museum with their children. It's an example from the Divine. Even I give you all the kingdom and all the gold in the world, is like these guys, you're not taking it with you. No matter how much they even try to pack it in their bags, they're now in the museums for everybody to come and see. But what you can take with you is your light. Is the beauty and the blessings of that light is an eternal dress.
That leads me to my next subject, which is death. What is the purpose of the force of death, the pressure of death on beings?
It's a very subtle reality that, again, our teaching is that we are coming from a heavenly reality. We must be existing in the nucleus before the world of form, which now material teaching doesn't talk about that. They basically say that you're in your mother's womb, you're born on that date of birth, and then after 1 year they celebrate your 1 year. It means you came from nowhere. They don't count the 9 months in the womb, and after you're 1 year old. But that's incorrect. Anybody who's seen the baby, there's 9 months of gestation. The reality is that we must come from the world of light. It means for you to see the form, you must be existing in the nucleus, in the source of power. So we're already born in that world of light, and we're given now an experience in this world of form. And so when we come into this world of form, it's an imitated life. It's not a real life. So spiritualists tell us that we're actually dead in this world. You're dead to the senses of your reality. Why is it that you don't hear these energies? Why is it that you don't see these energies that you came from? Because all of your senses have been brought down, so you walk around as if you're alive but you're really dead. Then as soon as you die, you're really alive and go back towards that energy, back towards that reality. So then death is just a phase in this journey where the reality of our life, and that's why we say it's like a traveling, it's like somebody sent to travel. This life is like a vehicle car, and we're given a certain time to travel in this world and what we're going to accomplish with this time that we're given. But it's not the actual journey. The body is just a means in which to flow through this existence, and the soul is eternal.
So for the person that has developed the soul to the point where that is maybe the the part of their being that is ruling their life. What's the difference between what's the difference between the moment after death for that person and the person that has been unconscious their whole life?
Wait, again?
There are some cultures that believe that we're here to work to the point of maintaining our consciousness past death. Right? There's quite a few cultures that believe that. I don't know if you subscribe to that. You were mentioning that the ultimate that we can accomplish is to be moved by our source, by our heart. So that the person that is moved by that source, the source of their heart, their connection, how do they experience that moment of death compared to somebody else? Do you have an idea of that, or am I still unclear?
At the time of actual death, there's a spiritual teachings that to die before you die.
Right.
So there are masters who they're not governed by their physical desires. So there's a body and the soul inside. With spiritual disciplines and trainings is to bring out that reality where their bodily desires pretty much died and they're governed by their spiritual being. So they reach a station of death before death. So they're dead to the desires of the body and what we call saints. In Sufism called awliya, that their soul is governing their body and that majestic reality begins to dress them. They hear what people don't hear because they're hearing now from a quantum reality. We hear through the physical. If you can hear through the soul, that's up to the divine, and the divine teaches through prophetic teachings. If you approach me through voluntary worship, then I become the ears in which you hear, the eyes in which you see, the breath in which you breathe, the tongue in which you speak, the hands in which you touch, and the feet in which you move. It's a description of these saintly realities. And that's why in old miniatures throughout cultures, they showed the saints and the prophets with the sun over them. It means the emanating light of their being is so powerful, it affects everything in its proximity. They've experienced that, where now their soul is out, they hear things that people don't hear, they see things that people don't see. Many of us may experience only through dreams. And the concept of sleep and dreaming is the divine wants us to have a taste of that reality. Because sleep is a form of death. That's why it's been given to us. Everybody has to sleep. So throughout the day, put your ego down, because the ego sleeps, not the soul. The soul is light and is energized, doesn't need anything from the body. So what actually sleeps is the body and the ego. As soon as the body and the ego sleeps, the divine is saying, this is like death. What are you going to do now in that state of death? That's why many people start to dream, have experiences. Their soul goes out to its consciousness and receives information, receives warnings, receives all sorts of signals or desires. All your desires throughout the day may play out at night through your soul to show you, look, this is what you've occupied us with, this is what we're sort of existing in. So then spiritual masters come to teach us and train us, is to bring out the reality of the soul. So then in their state of death, that's why the prophets were teaching that if you come across these martyred beings, what we call martyrdom doesn't mean that you're martyred in battle. That you are martyred in life means that you put down your desires. And your desires are not governing you. So then the Prophet was teaching that when you come to the graves of these special beings, don't deem them to be dead. Their lights are fully alive. They've put down their body desires, and that grave becomes a base for where their soul is located and does many different things in the world of light. And that's why there's a lot of blessings where people go for pilgrimages. That these beings, not only they were powerful when they were alive, but they're much more powerful that they passed. They emptied the ego, they left the body, and this energy, where is it? It's of service in this creation.
So you believe that they continue their evolutionary journey past death to some extent?
There should be no ending. There should be no ending, but again Sufism comes into a different understanding. There's no recycling. just constant growing. The divine Al-Khaliq is always creating, and your soul is always ascending. As the divine is emanating this energy, this grace, these knowledges, the soul is ascending towards it. There's no need to recycle it. We recycle because we have limited resources. Divine doesn't have anything limited. From every drop the divine gives, as if not a drop was taken. So then our soul is always in an ascension towards realities.
Well, this is my last section here of purpose and intention. How would you describe the force of intention and purpose within beings? I mean, some people call it freedom of choice that we've been given. We've been allowed that gift. What is the force of intent, the force of purpose? How would you describe that?
The force of purpose?
Let's see.
What Maulana Shaykh's teaching, or my beloved teacher's teachings, is for us to understand we're not choosing when we come into this world and when we go. Now, qismat and destiny is always a big question. What am I destined for? So then they give the analogy, because Sufism always teaches through analogy so that we can relate to our everyday life what these realities are talking about. You're on a flight from LA to New York. You don't have the choice to board at LA, and it's not your choice to depart at New York. When I came into this world, it wasn't asked me. When I'm leaving, nobody's asking my opinion. So on this flight from LA to New York, you're on the plane. Our life is about what type of passenger are you going to be. Some passengers are going to complain the whole time. I wanted to be in first class, I wanted to have this food, I wanted to have that food. And destiny begins to teach us, look, you got row 11, be happy with it. And most people are not. The spiritual masters are like stewardess. They come on to the passenger and begin to teach. Why don't you just be happy? Learn to be content where you are. In your contentment and in your happiness, perchance you may be fortunate. And then they teach you, okay, sit there, do your meditation, be happy where you're sitting. All of a sudden they come and say, oh, you know what, we have an opening in row 27. Would you like to move up? And then you start to move. You don't change your entry, you don't change your departure, you just change the character of how you act on this journey. And if you submit and have good character, we believe divine grace can dress you at any time. Oh, somebody didn't eat, I have an extra meal for you, since you were complaining of your hunger. But to be belligerent, to be angry, to be violent, doesn't change anything. It doesn't scare anyone on that plane with authority. The angels don't react based on our doing bad things. They actually wonder that, why do you have such bad character? Keep them in that seat. So the spiritual masters teach us, do good things, be patient, be content, be loving, be appreciating of what you have, and if the divine sees it fit, you will be graced with what is necessary for you.
And that's another paradox, isn't it? Because, I mean, in a way you're making a decision to not feel the need to be in control. But that's a decision of a kind, right? I mean, that's kind of, in a way, that's our subtle self-determination, is to acquiesce.
Yeah, that you have to. That's when the philosophers start to get this subject and go all over the place, because everything can be another question. But the reality is that the masters are teaching, it's our duty to achieve the best. Not limit ourselves based on that thought. Oh, well, God destined for me to be a doctor, then I would be a doctor. No. Because a fish doesn't jump into your pocket, but you have to guard in fish. What they're saying is good character. If you don't get it, you can't go beat up your professor, so I had to be a doctor. But you try your best with whatever is given to you, whatever abilities were given to you, whatever opportunities were open to you, achieve always for the best and be content with what opens for you. You tried your best, the rest, qismat, is God's writing. You can't sort of cry over spilt milk.
Why is there such discordance between religion?
If you go back maybe 70 years or 100 years, and look at places on this earth, all major religions were studying together. And spiritualists and religious people were all coexisting. There was a strong spiritual practice. That spiritual practice allows people to be different on how they want to approach. Spiritualists believe in the sense of love without judging. If this person wants to say that they're this faith and doing these practices, fine. Keep yourself good, keep your practices good, don't harm others, try to improve yourself, leave the rest for the divine. And we move towards leaving spiritual practices and just following material pursuits. So we may look old to you, but we're actually like children in a playground, in a sandbox. And it's best to watch children in a sandbox so you can film that as a part of the show. That these kids get into this box, they have a box that they don't own, the sand is not theirs, and every kid with this shovel and bucket is hitting the other kid. Like, give me your bucket, give me your shovel, give me this castle, and at the end, 4 o'clock, Mom says, let's go. And they know that they're not going to stay there. So why were they fighting the whole time? And then next day, it starts anew. You were here yesterday, and you know Mommy took you at 4 o'clock. Why are you fighting again there? But they don't pick it up, because they're children. So then Divine is saying, don't think you've grown up just because you're bigger. You're just a bigger child, and your desires are the same. Nobody takes it with them. Why are you fighting like that? And then we lost all of our spiritual trainings. And I think probably in the last 50, 60 years, all over the world, spiritualists have been basically cut out. That there are very few, and if they are, they're all sort of not in focus. They don't get the limelight.
That's a great analogy. I love that one, the sandbox. So if you don't mind, I think I might.
That's yours.
No,
you got to film the kids.
You know, there is a belief system of an American Indian that believes that there is actually beings that are working on our energy. They're feeding off of our negative energy is what's caused all this separation. Right? I mean, recorded history isn't all that far ago, and probably when recorded history began is when we lost track with our inner selves, I would imagine.
Mm.
So you talk a lot about this. You're looking. It's almost like insanity, right? You're talking about these little kids that we've all grown up and basically haven't grown up. We're just big kids. I totally agree with you, and I see it like that as well. So we still haven't accounted for why. Why all of a sudden? Because we obviously, as a species, we've been around forever. So why all of a sudden did we make this turn and became this distorted being? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, but they're not going to be mainstream. So
mainstream is not.
Some people may look at this and say, "Oh, this guy."
I plan on mentioning in this thing about these beings because I want to actually get to a core of something. We always hear about this fluffed over stuff. I don't mind sharing all viewpoints.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's something you would like to talk about or not, but what is your thoughts on that? What is that where we took off?
I think that, again, out of divine mercy, they're going to be teaching us from everywhere. So if we're going to a spiritual center, going to a church, a synagogue, a mosque, we're going to hear the message as well as in media around us, because everybody is working by inspiration. If the inspiration better, more inspired, darker, much darker, but the advertising has begun. So if we look at popular movies, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Matrix, very important in our understanding of ourselves. That there are beings that in good actions, they give us energy. They don't need anything from us, which is nature. That's why if you hold something created from the divine, and you can do the practice later off camera, is you hold something from the divine, it has its own chanting from divine presence. It doesn't need anything from you. You hold an apple because it has seeds, it has a life force. Hold an orange, put that next to your heart, you know that your energy is charged. A tree, everything in nature, Yusabihu bihamdi, that Allah is teaching that everything is in praise from Divine Presence. That praise has an energy. So when we hold the salt, that's why we used to use salt for purification, for purifying the meat, take away negative energy. All of those give us energy. Angels in praising and good actions give us energy. They're spiritual beings that will give their energy. Then, at the same time, there are negative energies, that they don't have that energy and they feed off of us like a battery. And then we see ourselves just like in the Matrix. When he took them to the pod, I said, don't think that you're really alive. These guys are feeding on you. And in that movie, we didn't see Bluetooth yet. And then that movie came out, and now Divine is saying, look, these people are wired. And everybody has all these devices plugged into them that are not giving them energy, actually taking their energy. So the computer at your office, the environment in which you work in, you are the greater or the deeper pocket. So when there's a liability, they go after the deep pocket, because he's got billions in cash. That's the one who they look to as the energy source. Negativity and negative beings, they say, you're the ever-cell battery, not that little thing. That's just a means in which to lock onto your energy source that we're not entitled to, because you're a gift from creation. So then we become a battery source. As we wire ourselves with these technologies, it's actually feeding from us. So the computer zaps us, the Bluetooth zaps us, the iPods zap us until we find ourselves with nothing. And as we become empty, 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 they can begin to ride us and begin to manipulate the system. So then their energy forces start to deal with the head, because they can come through the screen and not the heart. So when you feel a spiritual attack, the attack or the tingling, because a lot of people say, oh, I went somewhere and my head was tingling. Yeah, because they're coming through the screen. The screen is not a protected being. It means if it can come through your head and energize through your head, it's now trying to enter to your being. It cannot enter the heart because God's grace is upon the heart. So then they're teaching, as you lower your energy field is lowering like a ship without a force field. You now will be bombarded by spiritual attack. Because spiritual beings look at us like a bus. They all want to ride. And they get a free ride everywhere you're going. Spiritual associations and the concept of a spiritual master is they're highly charged. And in just the law of energy, if I send out, or if they send out, I'm nothing. If they send out a very powerful positive force, they can hit all negative forces and bring it back. And they know how to process the negative energy. Through their chanting, they have in their heart a recycling factory, an incinerator, that its food is negativity. So enlightened masters, they can burn the negativity off their students like an incinerator. Every star needs a fuel source. So it pulls these negativities, learns and knows how to process them, and emit more energy and more light out. But if we don't know how to process, we're just being drained, 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 until we have no defense mechanism ourselves, and we become overrun by these beings and these energies.
Or Borg, to bring up another media image, eh?
Yeah.
You know the Borg, right, from Star Trek, where they're half machine,
half human.
Their hive thing, right? You know,
yeah.
And
that like the analogy of Lord of the Rings is a very Sufi movie. The Gandalf is the sheikh, is the mentor, trying to teach them towards their reality. And then the forces that they're coming against lost their humanity. They look so evil and so bad, and the other ones were so beautiful and so majestic. So constantly battling our bad desires and these energies, and to really begin to understand and study energy, that it's all around us, and we have to be able to work and use these devices, but at the same time recharge, move away from all of them, go back into nature, go back into water, go back into these realities and start to re-energize ourselves, keep our battery charged, and then work so that there's a balance in life.
Cool. See, that's the juice I want. Right?
You got it.
Because I think that's what needs to be pounded into people. You know, the Matrix is fantastic, but it's so abstract most people don't get it. They might, right? But I think if you just tell people.
Well, that's why he was running in fear until he got shot.
You mean at the end there, and then he became
light.
Right.
And that was the station of death before death.
Right.
That
he became energy.
Yeah, and he saw the binary code.
Right.
It means now you start to see the code. The binary code means the angelic reality. This is all a coded program. And if you run in fear of this program, running, what the heck? So then he's teaching, and then he submits and finds that nothing happened. Now he can see the binary code. So deep spiritual realities.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you.
You got it.
So I'll just ask one last thing. What is the Sufi message? I mean, it almost seems like after that, but what would be? I'm sort of forming this as it goes along.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest with you,
Sure.
I asked this question of the rabbi, and that's not within his sphere. There, you really see where different religions have. You see their walls. You start banging against the walls a bit gently, right?
Yeah, and it's not to their blame. They have to work within parameters, because that structure is a big structure. They have within their churches and synagogues and mosques, if the imams do, they have to work within these guidelines, and they're accountable to these guidelines. Again, the spiritualists are not invited anywhere, and so we don't work within those guidelines. And you can move way outside of that thinking and move towards energies and realities.
It's funny, hey, that your Muslim, your Islam is your would you say is your religion?
Yes, the base.
It is base, and yet you talk we spoke with a president of the Ahmadiyya Association, and I'm sure that he doesn't see the same thing you do.
No.
And yet you come from the same base. It's perfectly, you see it everywhere, but it's still mind-boggling to me just how different message somebody gets out of the same source.
Definitely, you get out of this whole life is like that. We all live in Vancouver, but everybody has a different understanding of what their purpose in life is. And it's the spiritual path that begins to open that energy, and then the power of that path.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
You had him when you mentioned the Matrix.
Okay.